In the Chronicles of the Kings, it records that David learned his lesson the hard way. After attempting to bring the Ark of the Covenant up to Jerusalem on a new cart, David then went back and read what Moses said. Because after Moses' nephew died, by touching the ark, by just attempting to steady it when the ox shook the cart, then David was offended. David was heartbroken. David was afraid of Yehovah. He feared Yehovah, so he went back to the word, back to what was written. And he found where it was written that Moses said that the Levites must carry the Ark of the Covenant upon their shoulders with the staves that are inserted through the four rings in the four corners of the Ark of the Covenant. So now David brings the ark up in due order. He does it according to the word. He doesn't just ask what was written. He read what was written, and he did what was written. And so Samuel continues on with the story that David, at that time, when he went up and brought the ark of God from the house of Obed-Edom, and what did we learn about this term, the ark of God? It is the God whose name is Yehovah Tsevaot, who dwells between the cherubim. So he brought up the ark of Yehovah from the house of Obed-Edom into the city of David with gladness. And David danced before Yehovah with all of his might. And David was girded, not in his majestic royal attire, not in the king's garments that would be reasonable for such an occasion in which the Ark of the Covenant is brought up, but no. He was attired, he was garbed only in a white linen ephod. This is exactly how the high priest dressed on the Day of Atonement. The high priest would take off all of his accoutrements, his beautiful breastplate, all of his sashes, all of his beautiful accoutrements of his position and authority as the high priest. He would shed those garments and then walk into the Holy of Holies with the smoking fire pan, with that vessel, with the blood in it, and he would just be wearing his white linen jalabia, a white linen ephod, the sinner's garments. And that is exactly what David was wearing. And he danced with all of his might in his plain white linen ephod. So David and all the house of Israel brought up the ark of Yehovah with shouting and with the sound of the trumpets. And they brought in the ark of Yehovah and set it in his place in the midst of the tabernacle that David had pitched for it. And even though we do not have any of the dimensions or any of the fabric, anything of which this tabernacle was constructed, we do know that it was in the city of David, that David had pitched for the Ark of the Covenant. And then David offered burnt offerings and peace offerings, thanksgiving offerings before Yehovah. And as soon as David had made an end of offering the burnt offerings and the thanksgiving offerings, he blessed the people in the name of Yehovah Tsevaot. And you know how he blessed them. Yivarechecha Yehovah v'yishmerecha. Yair Yehovah panav elecha v'yichunecha. Yisa Yehovah panav elecha v'yischem lecha shalom. The Aaronic blessing. This is how the priests were told to put the name of Yehovah upon the people. And this is exactly what David did. And he blessed the people in all things in the name of Yehovah. Because Yehovah, when he hears his name, and his name is called upon for this blessing, he hears from heaven, and he will bless the people. So, it tells us that as the ark of Yehovah came into the city of David, Michal, who is Saul's daughter, David's wife, Michal looked out through a window and saw King David leaping and dancing before Jehovah, and she despised him in her heart. Then David, after he blessed the people, returned to his own household to bless his own household. And that is when his wife, Michal, came out to bark at him. How glorious were the king of Israel this day, who paraded around in front of the handmaids of his servants, shamefully garbed like one of the vain fellows, the low-life commoners. And David said to Michal, it was before Jehovah who chose me over your father. And he chose me over all of his household, your brothers. And he has appointed me the ruler over the people of Jehovah and over all of Israel. That is why I played and danced, and I will play and dance before Jehovah. And furthermore, you self-centered, arrogant witch, the maidservants of which you have spoken of them I will be had in honor. Therefore, Michal, the daughter of Saul, had no child to the day of her death. In other words, David said, you made your own bed, sweetheart. Now you can sleep in it alone for the rest of your life. These maids that you speak of, David had otherwise at the time. And he was going to have otherwise, such as Bathsheba. And by them, he would have children. But because of this nagging witch, who this Israeli Jewish princess who thought the world centered around her and her family, raised in royalty, and she just couldn't handle David singing and praising and dancing and taking off his royal garments and just being a man. And so he said, yeah, you made your own bed, now you can sleep in it. David marries Bathsheba, and they have a son, Solomon. Solomon, who became the wisest man in the world, other than Yeshua. He can't compete with him, but the wisest and the wealthiest man in the world said in the Ecclesiastes, in the Preacher, I find more bitter than death the woman whose heart is snares and nets of destruction, and her hands are like shackles. He who shall escape from her pleases God. But those who miss the way to escape shall be caught in her trap. David got out of the trap. He escaped from this one whose very words just cut to the bone. Nothing was good enough for her. And so she dies childless. She dies in her own room. And neither David nor anyone else visits her for the rest of her life. Well, David dies, and Solomon builds and dedicates the temple. David was not allowed to build the temple, but David set aside billions of dollars worth of provision for his son Solomon to build the temple. And when the temple was completed, the Ark of the Covenant was moved into the temple. We read about it in the book of the Kings that Solomon assembled the elders of Israel and all the heads of the tribes, the chief of the fathers of the children of Israel in Jerusalem, that they might bring up the Ark of the Covenant of Jehovah out of the city of David, which is Mount Zion, the city of David. And all the men of Israel assembled themselves to King Solomon at the feast in the 7th month. So this is the Feast of Tabernacles. This is when the Temple of Solomon was completed. The Holy of Holies was completed. And now it is ready for the dedication of the temple. And how is it going to be dedicated? The Ark of the Covenant of Yehovah Tsevaot, who dwells between the cherubim. On occasion at this point, and had just been on occasion for hundreds of years. The Ark of the Covenant was brought up, Solomon knew the drill, on the shoulders of the Levites, and was brought into the holy place, into the Holy of Holies. And it was in the 7th month, the Feast of Tabernacles. And this is when, from the tabernacle of David, the Ark of the Covenant was brought in. And so it says that the elders came and the priests took up the ark, and they brought the ark of Yehovah and the tabernacle of the congregation that David his father had built. They brought not only the Ark of the Covenant, but they also brought up the tabernacle of David and all of the holy vessels that were in the tabernacle. And so the priest brought up the Ark of the Covenant of Yehovah into his place that Solomon had built, into the oracle of the house, which is the most holy place, under the wings of the cherubim. And these cherubim are the two monstrous cherubim who stood in the Holy of Holies. One wing touched the side wall on one side, and the one on the other side, his other wing touched the other side, and their wings crossed and back. Now in front of them, that is where the Ark of the Covenant was placed. When the Ark of the Covenant was placed in that place in front of these two monstrous cherubim with their four wings and back, then we had the representation of what Moses saw in the mountain and what John saw in the Revelation. The two living creatures, monstrous living creatures with 4 faces and 6 wings. And so this is what the picture is in Solomon's temple. And we see from the text that Solomon was given specific revelation. It says that the ark was brought into the holy place. For the cherubim spread forth their 2 wings over the place of the ark, and the cherubim covered the ark and the staves thereof, and then they drew out the staves, even though the staves were to remain in the ark and never to be removed. They drew out the end of the staves so that they were seen out in the holy place before the oracle, and they were not seen without. And there they are to this very day. So what this is telling us is that the staves from the ark were pulled out to one end to where they pushed the curtain from the Holy of Holies out into the holy place. And so the staves pushed the curtain out so that it could be seen on each side of the altar of incense. So that when they came in to burn incense on the altar of incense, when they came in to put bread on the table of showbread, and when they came in to trim the 7-branch menorah, that they could see that the ark was in its place. So the ark could be seen without, but it couldn't be seen without. You couldn't literally see it, but you could see the representation of the ark staves pushing the curtain out. So you could literally see the effect of the ark being in the holy place. And it says, and there it is to this very day. And there it was until the ark was removed. And it says at that time there was nothing in the ark except for the 2 tables of stone which Moses put there at Horeb, when Yehovah made a covenant with the children of Israel after they had come out of the land of Egypt. So it came to pass, when the priest came out of the holy place, that the cloud of glory filled the house, the holy place, filled the house of Jehovah, so that the priest could not stand to minister because of the cloud. For the glory of Jehovah had filled the house of Jehovah. Then Solomon spoke. Jehovah said that he would dwell in deep darkness. You can search the scripture for the rest of your life. You will never find where it says that he would dwell in deep darkness. How does Solomon know that he would dwell in deep darkness? Because Solomon was given the revelation. He was told what to do and how to build the house. And the Almighty, Jehovah, told him that he would dwell in deep darkness. And then he said, I have surely built thee a house. And that word house is an exalted residence and a settled place. And that word is only used once in the scripture, in this one place. It means on a lower level. An exalted residence and a settled place, a residence on a lower level for the ark of Jehovah to abide forever. Two places, he said, in the dedication, I have built, according to what Jehovah said, he would dwell in deep darkness on a lower level and in an exalted residence. So the Almighty came down between the wings of the cherubim in that exalted residence, but he had also built a place for the ark to remain a long time. Forever in Hebrew doesn't mean for eternity, it means for a long duration. Because Solomon built a stone sarcophagus into which the Ark of the Covenant would be hidden for a long time. He built the temple with a sand hydraulic elevator system that would be used in the time of a siege to hide the Ark of the Covenant, so that those who were so instructed by Jehovah, so instructed by the Almighty, would be able to, by divine revelation, know to take the ark down through that sand hydraulic elevator system, down through the chambers, and to then finally put it in the stone sarcophagus that Solomon had prepared ahead of time to hide the Ark of the Covenant for a long time. And now, we're going to hear the rest of the story.